FT. Welcome, everyone, to Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. First, breaking news. The New York State Senate has just defeated a bill this afternoon that would have legalized same-sex marriage. The vote was 38 to 24, not close, and not a single Republican voted yes, and a few key Democrats voted no as well, including several from New York City. On the phone from her 23rd District office in Staten Island, a disappointed Democratic State Senator Diane Savino, who voted in favor of marriage equality and gave an impassioned plea on the Senate floor today. Senator, hello. Thank you very much for coming on with us.
You're welcome, Brian. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you. Why do you think it turned out the way it did, and why do you think so many Democrats voted no?
Well, this has been, a very difficult bill to navigate from the beginning of this year. We've always known, those of us who are co-sponsors of the bill and supporters, that in order to pass it, it was going to require bipartisan support. We have members in the Democratic conference who have always maintained that they would not vote for marriage equality for a variety of reasons, whether they be their religious convictions or the concerns that it would reflect the wishes of their constituents.
So that even though you have a two-vote Democratic majority in the Senate, you knew you were going to lose some Democrats, so you're going to need some Republicans, and you didn't get any.
Absolutely. We got none. And in fact, I'm incredibly disappointed in the Republicans in today's vote because, in fact, there were several of them, again, I don't even know which ones they were, who kept assuring the advocates and the LGBT community that when the time came, when the time was right, that they would vote yes. And you
can't name names, Senator? You can't name any of those names?
Wouldn't, honestly, I'm not even sure who they were. We were told over and over by, the advocates, the Pride Agenda, and the Guild Foundation, based on their conversations with Republicans, that they had at least 3 or 4 definite votes, and that those members did not want their names to be revealed, but when the time came that they would do the right thing, that they would vote in favor. And in fact, several of them had said that, the most important thing that we should be dealing with right now is the deficit reduction plan, and they didn't want to take a vote until the deficit reduction plan had been dealt with, and then at that point we would vote. And unfortunately, they either misled the advocates, or they outright lied, or they chickened out at the last minute. I'm not sure what it is, Brian. But it is
maybe it's that. Tell me what you think of this theory, that they got scazafavad. And for people who don't know what that means, there was that much publicized congressional race in November, way upstate in the Adirondacks, where a moderate Republican named Scazafava was the nominee, and she basically got run out of the race before Election Day by the more conservative candidate who was running on the Conservative Party line. In other words, the Republicans in New York State seem to be supporting more conservative Republicans, not more moderate Republicans. And her support for marriage equality was one of the issues. So maybe all of a sudden, since that November result, even though the Democrat won that election, the moderate Republican got hounded out of the race. Maybe since that result, the New York State Republicans are afraid that they're going to face primary challenges from the right if they go with you on this issue. Do you think?
Well, look, I mean, I'm sure for some of them that's an issue that has crossed their mind. But, as I've told many people, including some of my Republican colleagues leading right up to the vote, nobody gets unelected around one vote. It just doesn't happen. If you're going to get thrown out of office by the voters, it's going to be because of a confluence sequence of events. It's going to be your legislative record. It's going to be a reaction to what's going on in the communities that you represent and whether or not the people who have elected you believe that you are still capable of leading.
But they didn't buy that argument, unfortunately. But what about the Democrats? How about Queens?
Brian, let me just finish this one point. What happened with Didi Scozzafava as well, remember, that was an open seat. And in fact, in spite of them attacking her because of her moderate voting record as a Republican and putting forth a right-wing conservative, he lost. So the people rejected that, that type of politics as well. They didn't want a right-wing conservative Republican representing them. They wanted somebody who they felt comfortable would address the issues that matter to them. And I think that's true in just about every district.
You can't just blame the Republicans because so many Democrats, or enough Democrats, 7 of them voted no. Montserrat from Queens, Honorado from Queens, I think Huntley, is Huntley a Democrat?
Yeah, she's a Democrat.
From downstate. So New York downstate Democrats voted no on this. It doesn't seem that Queens is any more ready for gay marriage than Hamilton County is.
Again, that's a possibility, or the way that some of these elected officials view the situation. This is one of those votes that clearly is what I call it's a conscience vote. It's like choice. It's like the death penalty. And I have no problem with people who are opposed to it from a position principle or religiosity.
Your problem is with people who support it but were too afraid to vote for it. That's your point, right?
Exactly.
Okay, now before you go, why did the Democratic leadership do this to yourselves? You lost by 14 votes. Why did the Senate Majority Leader, why did the governor bring this to a vote if it was going to lose?
I think you'd have to ask the governor why he insisted on bringing this to the floor. For the past 2 months or so, we who are supporters of the bill and the advocates who have been, trying to get this law passed in New York State, we've been talking about this for quite a long time, and the advocates felt that at this point they deserve the dignity of a public debate on the bill. Bring it to the floor, let it vote it up or down. I agree to support that position, although I have voiced my concern with it more than once. Because I was afraid that the outcome was going to be exactly what it was.
And so it is, 24 to 38, gay marriage, for the moment, defeated in New York State. Demographics indicate that it will come back, though it may take a few more years and probably eventually be passed, but not obviously in 2009. State Senator Diane Savino of Staten Island, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
It's Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Next, it's where web video meets Afghanistan and Iraq. Before we get to President Obama's speech last night, look who turned up in Baghdad to launch their YouTube channel. It is Google CEO Eric Schmidt.
Hello, I'm Eric Schmidt, CEO of Google. There's nothing more important than communications. There's nothing more important than information. It's great that the Iraqi government is introducing the Iraqi Gov YouTube channel so that we'll discover even more what's great about Iraq, this new country that's being built, the resurgence of a new society, and the amazing things they have in store for all of us. I've just arrived in Iraq for the first time. The government ministers that I've met with are committed to openness. They're committed to building a modern society. There's a lot of excitement about what Iraq will be. And as the American presence diminishes and as the Iraqis take over, we think that transparency and openness will be the key to their success. Just think, in this new society of Iraq, they'll be able to follow what their government is doing, figure out what the politicians are really up to. And the URL, of course, is youtube.com/IraqiGov. Thank you very much.
Eric Schmidt, Google CEO in Iraq, where he hopes YouTube videos will spread freedom of thought. Will he show up in Kabul next? Coming up, a New York City vet with 200 Afghanistan combat missions reacts to the president's address. Then the fate of local TV news.
Local television news in this country is the General Motors of the media. They know how to do things in the 1950s. They still do it that way. They cannot bring themselves to change. And the change that's required for them to survive is essentially they have to burn the place to the ground. And they're just not prepared to do that.
Local news later, world news now. Afghanistan. Did you watch President Obama make the case for a surge of 30,000 troops? The plan is for training more Afghan soldiers, putting more pressure on al-Qaeda in Pakistan, and more protection of Afghan civilians from the Taliban. Regarding that third goal, we found this Defense Department video. It's self-serving, yes, but revealing.
This evening, these soldiers from Fob Wolverine in Zabul province, Afghanistan, are conducting protection patrols in the nearby villages.
We'll meet them, we're going to walk in, we'll meet them in the center, and then we'll talk about a couple things before actually going into the village.
A lot of what happens in this area, it's a lot of intimidation. So even if it's not a true incident, even if there is a thought that the Taliban came here, that has a significant effect. So in order to overcome that, we made sure that we showed them a sign of our security by being out there with them for a period of about 72 to 96 hours to ensure that there wouldn't be any opportunity of the enemy coming and trying to intimidate them or steal their money or try to collect taxes from them.
Protecting these villagers is the mission. But how do these soldiers on the patrols measure their success?
The results of that, the only way you're going to see it is if more Afghans come forward and start providing information. That takes time. That is not going to happen tomorrow. They're going to have to build their trust and learn how to communicate with us. And they got to know that when their information comes to them, they need to pass it to us to be able to take action on it with the Afghan National Forces.
The reason why these Afghans need to be protected by these soldiers is because recently they received payments for letting U.S. forces expand Fob Wolverine on their land. But as the sun sets in this part of Zabul province, the Taliban move in against them and launch extortion plots. That's the reason why these troops are here tonight. And that's the reason why they'll be here tomorrow, protecting Afghans. Army Sergeant Wyatt Harper, Zabul province, Afghanistan.
A Pentagon video. Those soldiers in the field cost us taxpayers roughly $1 million each per year. Of course, that's not what they get paid. So last night, the president, seeking public support in these hard times, drew from the 9/11 well.
It's easy to forget that when this war began, we were united, bound together by the fresh memory of a horrific attack and by the determination to defend our homeland and the values we hold dear. I refuse to accept the notion that we cannot summon that unity again.
Unity? Let's get three reactions from a young veteran, an old ally, Great Britain, and an expert in nation building. In the Army, John McClelland was deployed to Afghanistan 4 times, going after high-value al-Qaeda targets. He is now a Columbia University student. Rahul Chandran is Deputy Director for State Building at the Afghanistan Reconstruction Project at NYU. And via Skype, taking the pulse of Great Britain, Nuala McGovern, this program's former producer, now working with the BBC. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
John McClelland, you went after high-value al-Qaeda targets in 200 combat missions in Afghanistan over 4 deployments. Thank you for your service. Were you going after Osama bin Laden?
Well, I mean, we'd go after anybody who we could get our hands on overseas in Afghanistan, and I'm sure that if it were feasible, both politically and also strategically, then we would do that. But unfortunately, I have not had the, I guess, the participation in that mission. So,
do you think that the deployment of these additional 30,000 troops and the other elements to support them that the President announced last night will make that more possible?
Well, I mean, I don't think the question really is Osama bin Laden. I think the question is the security of Afghanistan on
but wait,
a long-term
the question
basis.
is ultimately the national security of the United States, isn't it, in terms of disrupting al-Qaeda's ability to stage attacks on the West from bases in Afghanistan and Pakistan? Isn't that the ultimate mission?
Well, I mean, if that is our ultimate mission, part of it is sustaining Afghanistan for the future, because unfortunately, if Afghanistan remains as a failed state, then it will always have the ability to house different networks of you know, terrorist cells.
So do you think this 30,000 troop deployment will make a difference in that direction?
Well, I think it will create security in the immediate future, but I am very skeptical in the long run whether or not that will ultimately lead to security for Afghanistan.
Why?
I think that you put 30,000 troops there for 18 months. I think with the video that you saw there, they're really trying to translate a lot of the coin strategy from Iraq and translate it over to Afghanistan. The problem is that the type of security apparatus that we're creating there, I don't think will make Afghanistan more secure, because if you translate and you build the Afghan forces up to the levels that they want them to, and then you hand it over to the Afghan government, if we're maintaining the same operational tempo as we are right now, Afghanistan, without huge subsidies from NATO, our allies, and the United States, will not be able to maintain that security apparatus.
So, Rahul, you hear from John, as you hear from the President, how intertwined the national security mission and the Afghanistan state-building missions are. What do you think the President's new strategy overall is going to mean for the kinds of groups that you work with in Afghanistan?
I think the question here is how do you, as John said, provide more security to the Afghan people? And the answer is that, and I think this has become very clear from the President's strategy and from the comments made by a number of his key advisors over the last day or two, we're scaling back from a full-on coin strategy. We're protecting critical population centers, and we're trying to make sure that there is enough space for an Afghan political settlement. Because without an Afghan political settlement, there isn't actually going to be stability.
Can there be an Afghan political settlement? Are the Taliban ever going to come into the government, come out of the cold, as it were, from the insurgency? Do they have any ideological interest in that?
Taliban's not a unitary actor. I mean, the problem is there are many local people who are, for various reasons, some of them are poor farmers who have no other option for earning an income, who are opting into the insurgency. If we provide them security, if we provide them, and we, the international community, opportunities to earn an income, we say, hey, you can opt out of the insurgency and you can opt into the political settlements. And if you do so, here are some benefits. If you choose to stay out, if you're going to fight us, we will come and we will kill you. And that's a fairly persuasive tactic, if it's done properly and with commitment. If there isn't an Afghan political strategy and Afghan civilians behind it to say, I'm here, I'm the government, you know, I'm the man from the government, I'm here to help you, it's not going to work.
Nuala McGovern in London, NATO has been mentioned as a key player here, and I wonder what kind of reaction you're hearing in the UK. Prime Minister Gordon Brown said today that the UK would be sending an additional 500 soldiers. That's hardly the 30,000 that President Obama announced last night, but it would bring the total British forces in Afghanistan to 10,000. How much do you think the British people are behind them?
I think that the British people, I think there's a certain sense of relief to begin with that a decision has been made. There was definitely a level of frustration within the UK on how long it was taking President Obama to make a firm decision on troop levels. So to preempt that, Gordon Brown, really from the end of October and specifically over the past weekend, began to talk about a troop surge, began to talk about the 500 troops that would be sent. You kind of have to take this announcement in the context that it's coming from for the UK, which it has had a very difficult month. The month of November was probably one of its toughest so far in Afghanistan. In fact, this particular year, the UK forces have been there since 2001. It's very much seen as the US's war. It was called Obama's war last night, and I think that's really the sentiment that is echoed throughout the UK. They don't see themselves as a key player, but more, I've heard the words token gesture, and also heard some anger still towards Bush and Blair from previous years.
Nuala, the US's war, the President referenced the July subway bombings in London from a few years ago. Don't the British feel a stake in this war with respect to their own national security and disrupting al-Qaeda?
Well, it's quite interesting. It has been a core point of Prime Minister Gordon Brown's strategy to try and sell the troop surge and indeed the involvement within Afghanistan. He has said, he quoted specific figures over the weekend saying that 2/3 of plots that are masterminded against Britain are from the Pakistani-Afghan border, and that is the main reason. It's an epicenter, and that's why the UK needs to be there. That said, I don't believe it resonates in the same way as 9/11. The British public are very used to terrorist attacks. They have a history of it from various parts of the world, not always Al-Qaeda. One particular online poll that I saw from The Guardian, which is a left-leaning broadsheet, they asked the question, should we be involved in Afghanistan to try and stop attacks on British soil? 83% said no.
Wow.
So that's quite a high percentage. There's two other polls that I'd just like to mention that I think gives a full context. One is from the Independent newspaper in November, that 71% wanted a withdrawal within the next 12 months, a phased withdrawal. Somebody today said to me, it's not the beginning of the end, it's the end of the beginning, which I think is really interesting. So obviously it's not all troops back within 18 months, which just came up in your discussion there. That's really just the beginning. Who knows how many are going back after 18 months. The other poll I'd like to mention is a BBC Comres poll, which said that 64% of the British public considered this war unwinnable. That is a really high figure. So I think they're kind of biding their time, trying to get through it, but they are not gung-ho in any respect about that this is the way forward.
Fascinating statistics from London. John, what about your mates in the field? Do they feel that this war is winnable? It sounds like you personally don't. You're out now. And how do you think they feel about this number, 30,000 additional troops? General McChrystal really asked for 40,000 to 80,000 troops. Is this just enough to get a lot of people killed, but not enough to win?
Well, a lot of my personal friends who are still out there and deployed even right now, they really don't comment on it, on any of the political discussions, but the 30,000 troops are not going to directly affect their deployments because they've been doing this since 2001, going overseas in a constant cycle. So with that said, they're not going to be affected by it. But it does affect the kind of operational room that they have. They will have more room to go out and move more freely than they had been in the past with the new security environment right there. So.
And Rahul, what about the Afghan people, that large percentage that are not with the Taliban or Taliban supporters? Do they hear this news and think, oh, good, reinforcements? Do they hear this news and think, oh, bad, more war? Or how would you begin to describe?
I suspect that most of them didn't hear the news.
Why not?
Early in the morning, and there's not so much electricity in rural Afghanistan. Look, I think that there's a reaction in urban Afghanistan, in Kabul and in the cities, which is going to be much like the reaction in urban centers here. They're probably a little more liberal, a little more left-leaning, and a little more engaged with the rhetoric around this. I think one of the things that all my friends who are in the American, the British, and the various 42 other countries' militaries who serve out there have constantly said that they are welcomed in the field, and I've seen this myself. If you go down to the village and you're able to provide security, you're not somewhere where there's been an airstrike recently, you're actually serving the citizens of Afghanistan, you are incredibly welcomed. They want protection from the Taliban. They don't want the Taliban for the most part. They want peace, they want security, they want to be able to farm their land and grow their crops and feed their families. So like you or me or all of us around this table, right? We want a roof over our heads, maybe healthcare once in a while, school for the kids, and a chance to earn a fair wage. And beyond that, I don't think there's a lot of room for that beyond that if you're in a village in rural Afghanistan right now.
John, you complained to me in the past that there was no political will in the Bush administration to actually get bin Laden and the high-value al-Qaeda targets in Pakistan especially. Is Obama any different in this regard as far as you can tell?
Well, political will is one thing. It's also political risk, too. I think the problem is, and I think Rose correct on every front that he's talked about, but I'd like to say that one part that's really missing in the strategy, I think, is a comprehensive multilateral strategy encompassing a lot of different nations. Where is Iran in this? Where is China in this? Where is Russia? Where is Pakistan? I mean, all these countries have interest in Afghanistan, and these interests are unfortunately intertwined, and you can't just pick at one and not expect the other to unravel. So Pakistan is one. Russia has security interests too in the region. Iran does too. We have the United States on both sides of Iran, right now, and is funding part of the insurgency in western Afghanistan. And China has multiple economic interests in there, and I think that to bring some of these international actors to the table would also help with the political settlement.
Can I jump in on that?
Real quick.
I mean, I think that one of the things that this strategy will do is actually encourage international actors to engage. If we start to say, hey, look, at this point, this security is going to become a regional problem for you, as it is a regional problem for you if there is a fragile Afghanistan. Yeah, there's been some pushback, but it's been very easy for China and for India and for a few other countries to say, America's war, you guys will fix this eventually. It's a lot harder to say that if they know, oh, we're not here forever.
And that's the people, the countries in the region, China and Iran and Russia and like that. Nuala McGovern in London, the last word will go to you. The president talked about economics a lot last night, too, and not wanting to plunder the American treasury for this war so we can't do health care and other things. What about the British contribution as a member of NATO? If they're reluctant to send troops, how about money?
Well, I think one interesting person who was quoted quite widely today is Sir Jock Stirrup, and he is the head of the UK Armed Forces. His quote was, "It's too late to start thinking about the cost," which of course angered some of the public, thinking that cost should always be brought into it. Another senior politician, Kim Howells, who's chairman of the Intelligence Committee, has said that the money, he actually favours a withdrawal. He says, take the money out of the war effort, start spending it at home, and try and protect British soil that way. One thing I will add about, there is a conference coming up on January 28th that Gordon Brown is leading to set the timetable for Afghanistan, and he is expecting to have perhaps Iran, China and Russia within that group. Also, that the Prime Minister Yusuf Gilani, the Pakistani Prime Minister, is in London right now, so we expect something to come out of that in the next day or two, and they do call Pakistan the elephant in the room in all of these discussions.
Nuala, Rahul, John, thank you so much. Obviously, this is the beginning of this phase of this mission. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's Brian Lehrer Live. Here are this week's online video picks. Number one. Attorney General Eric Holder testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee last week about trying 9/11 suspects in civilian court here in New York. In nearly a full day of testimony, one interaction stood out and has broken out now as a YouTube hit. It was this line of questioning by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina.
Can you give me a case in United States history where an enemy combatant caught on a battlefield was tried in civilian court?
I don't know. I'd have to look at that. I think that, you know, the determination I've made...
We're making history here, Mr. Attorney General. I'll answer it for you. The answer is no. If bin Laden were caught tomorrow, would it be the position of this administration that he would be brought to justice?
He would certainly be brought to justice, absolutely.
Where would you try him?
Well, we'd go through our protocol, and we'd make the determination about where he should appropriately be tried.
Would you try him? Why would you take him someplace different than KSM?
Well, that might be the case. I don't know. I'm not. I'd have to look at all of the evidence, all of the... Well, he's been indicted. He's been indicted already.
Does it matter if you use the law enforcement theory or the enemy combatant theory in terms of how the case would be handled?
Well, I mean, bin Laden's an interesting case in that he's already been indicted in federal court. We have cases against him.
Right. Well, where would you put him?
It would depend on how.
Well, let me ask you this question. Okay. Let me ask you this. Let's say we capture him tomorrow. When does custodial interrogation begin in his case? If we captured bin Laden tomorrow, would he be entitled to Miranda warnings at the moment of capture?
Again, I'm not that old. All depends.
As you saw there, Attorney General Holder had no answer for whether bin Laden himself would be tried in criminal court, or whether they would read him as Miranda rights, or whether anyone else who attacked Americans in a war setting has ever been tried in civilian court. Holder may be doing the right thing, but he still needs to answer those questions for people to fully understand why. Now, if you don't like Lindsey Graham playing that kind of gotcha, or if you don't like the Republicans in Congress in general, video pick number 2 from Rob Tisch is for you.
What's great about Republicans in Congress is that if you want to heckle the president during his address to the nation, there's a rep for that. If you want to suggest that smacking around your wife doesn't truly count as assault, and neither does killing homosexuals, there's a rep for that. If you want to tell foreign governments that the United States can't be trusted, there's even a rep for that. Whether you want to refute scientific research by quoting biblical prophecy, declare that wives should be submissive to their husbands, or pass laws to establish the Bible as the Word of God for all Americans, we've got the reps you need. If you want to scare women with a false link between abortion and breast cancer, or if you think stiffer penalties for anti-gay violence are a threat to your freedom, or that same-sex marriage is a purely socialist concept, we've got reps for those things too. We've got reps if you want someone to call Michelle Obama uppity, or if Obama's election sends you looking for a great white hope to save the GOP. And if you want to push your political agenda by exploiting the fears of senior citizens, veterans, and parents of disabled children, we've got reps for that. Republicans in Congress, everything your democracy needs.
Pretty funny if you're on that side of the aisle. Maybe next week we'll find a pro-Republican ad in the style of the droid. Video pick number 3 might be disturbing, even though it's fiction. And it is fiction, but be warned. This is from the environmental group Plain Stupid, which campaigns against airplane travel. They calculated the weight in polar bears of the greenhouse gases produced by a typical European airline flight. And in this video, they depict those polar bears crashing from the sky. So seriously, turn away if you don't want to see that. It is a simulation. It's not real, but it is upsetting. This video is being viewed massively online. The reason we're showing it, already 500,000 times in its 1 week on YouTube. An extreme way to express data and to make a point from the group Plain Stupid, one of the most viewed issue-oriented videos right now. Video pick number 4 is some new but rare footage of the oldest surviving bridge in New York City. The city lets Street Films record this video from the High Bridge over the Harlem River between Upper Manhattan and the Bronx, where people are not usually allowed to go.
It opens up a great transportation link. It's actually the only pedestrian walkway that connects the island of Manhattan to the continental United States. So fixing up the bridge is just a great resource for the community in the Bronx, the community in the Manhattan, and people from all over who want to come and enjoy it.
With the reopening of the High Bridge on the horizon, TA and Bronx and Northern Manhattan cyclists are getting really excited because it's been a sought-after route for commuters and cyclists and walkers for decades.
The most recent history is that this staircase and this path were just opened a year ago by Mayor Bloomberg. Before that, there was no way to get down here without really scrambling and trekking through poison ivy and making it a real hike.
If experience shows from other bridges that have been reopened, the bike use is going to boom. The Manhattan Bridge was closed since World War II, and when that bridge reopened, bike use skyrocketed, and now the Manhattan Bridge is the second most cycled bridge in the city.
And if that whet your appetite, you should know there are plans to open the High Bridge to the public in 2012. And speaking of the future, ScottGardner.com has seen it. It's the year 3000 as historians and anthropologists rediscover the Beatles, with the usual mistakes that historians make.
For a while, they acted in a television series. It was called I Love Lucy. The prosthetics and makeup on the show was just incredible. You couldn't tell it was them.
They invented the thumbs up. It's a gesture you don't see much anymore, but people would do this to each other, and the Beatles were the first to do it.
And they were pioneers even in animation. Paul McKenzie, just pen to paper, just doodling around. The next thing you know, we have Mickey Mouse.
Perhaps the Beatles' greatest accomplishment came with the release of their groundbreaking album, Sgt. Pet Sounds and the Spiders from Asia.
Sadly, no copies of this album remain. They were all fed to Emperor Gorlock in 2652. However, I've taken it upon myself to form one of the finest beatology teams in the world. We have reconstructed ancient sheet music in the hopes of determining what this album might have sounded like. These are our findings.
Soon after the album's release, rumors began to circulate that the Beatles would break up. They, of course, did not, and for decades they continued to grow in popularity and size, adding new members each year.
And that's the way it was with this week's online video picks. It's Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. And when television news began, the only way to produce it was with heavy cameras, clunky editing equipment, and large crews. It was tough to lug it all out into the field. Print journalists switching to TV said it was like writing with a 1,000-pound pen. And the only way to get the story seen was broadcast TV. But technology is changing all that. What does that mean to local TV news?
Local TV news is already dead. They don't know it. They're dead for several reasons. One, nobody cares. Two, by the time news at 6, by the time 6 rolls around, everybody knows it already. And three, the stuff sucks. Other than that, I think they're fantastic. Local television news in this country is the General Motors of the media. They know how to do things in the 1950s. They still do it that way. They cannot bring themselves to change. And the change that's required for them to survive is, essentially, they have to burn the place to the ground. And they're just not prepared to do that. So like GM, they will go out of business. But unlike GM, there will be no government bailout for local news. It's just going to go away.
In case you missed the name, the fellow you just saw there is Michael Rosenblum. He is a video futurist, the guru of the new video journalism. Over the past 22 years, he has taught some 15,000 people how to become video journalists, that is, to be a one-person video crew. In the process, he has transformed video news gathering from our local New York 1 to Korean TV. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be here.
Now, wait a minute. Didn't local TV news used to be the cash cow, which is why it expanded from just 6 o'clock for a half hour to live at 5 and live at 4:30 and the whole thing?
Nothing made you richer than owning a local TV news station, as Lyndon Johnson could have attested to. But those days are over. They're over because local television news and local stations were worth a lot because you put the signal through the air, and because of the nature of physics and the FCC, you could only have 3 or 4 or 5 stations. A place like New York, that meant 3 or 4 or 5 stations dividing up 8 or 9 million viewers. An idiot could make a fortune if you owned one of these things, but those days are over. The cable came along, and we went from 5 to 500 to 1,000. I mean, on Time Warner, I probably have 2,000 channels. Who even goes up that far? And now the web has gone to video, and soon your iPhone is going to go to live video. So all the platforms have fractionalized the audience, and the revenue that once came from advertisers willing to pay for so big a chunk is gone. It's just gone.
So where does your training of one-person crews come in?
Well, that's in some ways that's almost a stopgap measure. A lot of the stations that we work with in the United States and overseas are looking for ways to cut costs, because that's what they have to, like newspapers, that's what they have to do immediately. A typical local television news station might employ 250 or 300 people and put 8 camera crews on the street of a large city like New York. That's crazy. That's a crazy way, and that's a 1958 architecture. So if we go to a station, we say, you have 250 employees, they all came here because they want to make the product. We're going to give each of them, or we'll give 50 of them cameras, we'll give 50 of them laptops to edit on. You're going to put 50 cameras on the streets in the hands of 50 journalists, and now we go from 8 cameras to 50 cameras, and 8 edit rooms to 50 edit rooms, and now we can fire half the staff because they don't really do anything anymore. But that's
meaning you can fire the producers and the engineers who used to carry the equipment.
Of course. And you can fire a lot of the associate producers and the assistant producers. And I mean, nothing personal, but you got a control room there with like 12 people in it, but all your product comes from the web. Give all of them cameras, let them go out and shoot stories. That's what they came here to do.
What happens to the quality of the journalism? Not on a talk show like this, because we're not out news gathering.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Right? We're using, with our actually tiny staff, we're out
You're
using,
doing a great job. Don't let me
No, I'm just saying that we're using the web to bring in video because we don't have street reporters.
I understand that.
But
You have millions of street reporters. That's where your web video comes from.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But we don't claim to be going out and doing a comprehensive newscast covering the issues of New York City.
But you can.
The local channels do claim to be doing it.
But that's insane, because first of all, if you look at the stories they do, dead body found in the basement, automobile accident, fire, these aren't stories that impact even 0.0001% of the population. If there's a dead body found in the Bronx, it really doesn't have any impact on my life.
Local TV news was always infotainment.
It is
to begin
crap.
with.
It's tabloid newspapers brought to television. So let's get beyond the journalism issue. There is no journalism in these things.
So if they were to send this army of one-person crews out to City Hall and the state capitol, into people's communities to find out how the economy is doing, they're going to do better?
Well, of course they'll do better. That's what a free press is all about. The problem is, in the world of television, we haven't had a free press. We've had a Soviet system in which a few commissars decided what the people would see. And there's still this mentality of, we will do what is good for the people. In point of fact, the people know what interests them. Give them cameras, give them laptops, let them produce stuff and put it online, and it will percolate to the top. They will tell you what they want to talk about.
Speaking of citizen journalism, Google, as one would expect, is right at the center of citizen-generated media. I want to show a video. This is Google explaining how they want to help your news organization with YouTube Direct. Let's take a look.
Today, anyone can record the news. Virtually every event can be captured and shared instantly on YouTube, giving us an unprecedented view of our world. But how can media organizations like yours take advantage of this revolution in citizen reporting to enhance your own news coverage and analysis? The answer is YouTube Direct, a new platform that allows news organizations to solicit and verify news footage on YouTube by connecting you directly with video makers who want to participate in your news gathering process. Here's how it works. YouTube Direct brings the functionality of YouTube's upload platform to your website. You can customize the platform to ask your audience for news footage on particular events, or you can solicit commentary around the stories of the day. Every video that a visitor submits to your site will be accessible on a private moderation platform, where you'll be able to accept or reject each submission based on your own editorial guidelines. Videos that your editors accept will be automatically tagged on YouTube with a link back to the original page on your website. You can also reach out to the video maker directly to get more information about the clip. That way, you can rebroadcast the best footage on your network or website, or incorporate the user submissions into your regular reporting. YouTube Direct allows you to create your own Bureau of Citizen Stringers, leveraging the YouTube platform and community to expand both your audience and the scope of your reporting. Find out more at youtube.com/direct.
So it sounds like they're in the same business that you are,
Yes,
advising people who run television stations how to fire all their reporters and use citizen journalists to be, what did she call them, citizen stringers. That's a freelance journalist. And she did earlier use the word verify. Right. And that's where the paid staff has to come in.
Right. I'm not
because the quality is so uneven.
So what? So what if the quality is uneven? The part, I think it's fascinating, and the Google guys are obviously very smart. The part you don't need here is the broadcaster. That's the interim that will ultimately go away.
Because people will get the stuff directly on the web?
Of course. The most successful websites, look at eBay, okay? There's a great website. All the crap in the world for sale up here, and all the people who want to buy it down here. If I said I was hiring somebody to be the executive producer of eBay, and they would decide at 10 o'clock we're doing G.I. Joe dolls, and at 11 o'clock we're doing radios, and 12 o'clock we're doing razors, you'd say, no, you don't understand. That's not how eBay works. eBay works because you want all the stuff up here, and you want J-date. All the Jewish girls who want to get dates up here, all the people who want to date them down here. We don't need a moderator. We don't want someone to moderate. Journalism is the same way. A website up here that has all the news and all the information, everybody puts something into it.
Well, what about the quality? I mean, do you want to go to a citizen dentist to get your teeth filled? So do you want your information only from citizen journalists?
You know, do you want to get your writing only from qualified writers? J.K. Rowling was a citizen writer. We think she did a pretty good job. We don't want moderators to say, you are allowed to be a writer, you, sir, may be a journalist, you, sir, may be in the radio, the rest of you, your whole job is to sit at home and listen to what these three people say.
But they're in the credibility business. And so if whatever the channels are that develop on the web have spotty credibility,
then no one will go there. This is a free market. We say we believe in a free press. We say we defend a free press. We believe in a free marketplace. When the free press actually comes along, we're all terrified of it. We go, no. I don't want that. You know why? Because we don't think the citizens, the real citizens, are smart enough to figure out what's real and what isn't. So we must be the arbiters of what is the truth. This is Pravda. This is not how the thing works.
Trained people need to know how to access government documents,
yes.
all that stuff.
Fine. There's a certain percentage
do, right?
that want to do that, and they'll learn how to do that. And other people want to run around and do TMZ and chase movie stars. So what? Who cares?
Where is the revenue stream that's going to support this?
That's
Why don't we
question.
have these channels yet online?
Here's the problem. A lot of my clients are like the New York Star Ledger. Lovely people, fantastic. And they let 40% of them go because that's Condé Nast for you. So they went off and they tried to set up their own website, and they said, we're journalists and we'll do this. The same thing happened in Rocky Mountain. You know, they all do this stuff. And when I go and talk to them, I say, they have the content side down perfectly. Citizen reporters, we have laptops, we do it cheap. I say, what about the revenue? They say, we'll do ad sales. And I say, who's going to do the ads? I say, well, we have a head of ad sales. And he goes to Coca-Cola and goes, wouldn't you like to buy? And of course, they don't want to. Now, here's the deal. Most of this stuff is local. In the local news business, there's $11 billion in revenue sitting on the table for somebody to scoop up. We have to do to the revenue side what we've done to the content side. That is, we have to democratize the revenue side. Just like anybody is free to go out and take a video camera and go and make stories, anybody is free to go and take a flip cam and go make commercials. So you can take here, look, she's probably getting paid nothing to be here. Go take your camera skills, go take the camera, here's a flip cam, I'll give it to you. Go take the camera and go take it down to the local shoe store and go make a 30-second spot for the guy and sell it yourself. Cable needs it. They have the appetite for it. 1 million people making and selling ads all day long. That's the other half of the equation.
Citizen, entrepreneurial,
absolutely,
advertising,
absolutely,
agencies.
Absolutely. Why not?
Why not?
Why not? Because that's where the money is. We're such schmucks. We always follow the story. We never follow the money.
A vision of the future. You're a video futurist. How long before that really comes to pass, in your opinion?
Ooh, you know, 5 to 50 years. It depends how quickly it goes. When I went to the BBC, I spent 5 years flipping them. They said, when will this happen? I said, when you're all dead. But luckily, they didn't wait that long.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. It was a pleasure.
It's Brian Lehrer Live. Coming up next, cameras kids build themselves, kids, to learn mechanical engineering and human relations.
Ma, guess what? I went back to college. No, I didn't quit my job. I'm finishing my degree with the CUNY Online Bachelor's in Business. I interact online with real City University of New York faculty on a schedule that fits my busy life. Ma, you should look who's teaching at CUNY. And it all leads to a high-quality Bachelor of Science degree in business. I can attend class anywhere, anytime. Yes, Mom, even at your house Friday night for dinner.
The CUNY Online Baccalaureate. Get back to business.
This is CUNY TV, the City University of New York.
Say, are you worried about H1N1? You know, swine flu. Well, CUNY says protect yourself from hidden horrors. Here's how. After touching public surfaces, don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Flu is also spread when infected people cough at you. Sneeze into a tissue, never your bare hands, or use your elbow. Wash often with soap and water, or use an alcohol-based hand cleanser. There are two kinds of flu shots this season. Consult your doctor or healthcare provider on the regular and H1N1 vaccinations. Most importantly, if you feel sick and have fever, stay home. Yes, a little caution goes a long way.
For more information, visit our website, CUNY.edu, and click on H1N1 Update.
This is Brian Lehrer Live, where web video meets the issues. Remember the Oscar-winning documentary Born into Brothels from a few years ago? It looked at the transformation in the lives of a group of children in Calcutta's red light district when they were given cameras to capture the world around them. The move inspired Columbia computer science professor Sri Nair to invent a new kind of camera, a camera children as young as 8 can build themselves. It's designed to teach basic concepts of physics and engineering and to help kids express their creativity. He calls it the Big Shot, and Professor Nair is here to show us how it works. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Brian. Pleasure to be here.
What was the inspiration and how does it work?
Well, you know, I'm actually an academic, and as you know, in our business, we sort of try and seek fundamental basic research results, publish them, and at some point, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, I started thinking about what we do, how it could possibly have an impact, more basic social impact on society.
And coming off the last segment, I mean, wow, talk about citizen journalism.
Yeah.
You're empowering 8-year-olds.
That's right. I mean, the initial goal here is to educate them, to expose them to science and engineering concepts. Maybe once they get past that, they can start thinking about journalism.
About documenting their world.
Documenting the
well,
world.
we have a silent video of the camera from the inside and out. Let's roll this, and you'll describe to us what we're seeing here.
So that's the camera itself, and like you said, it's called Big Shot, which is a play on words, the idea of taking little kids and teaching them science and engineering and then turning them into big shots, hopefully. Here you see some students putting the camera together. It comes as a kit of parts that they put together, and during this process we use each component as an opportunity to teach them important science and engineering concepts. And once they've put it together, and it has some unique features. Here you see that there's a power generator that allows one to crank the camera and create enough power to take a photograph. The camera also takes 3 different types of pictures, normal, panoramic, and stereoscopic pictures, which are 3D pictures, which, as you can imagine, kids really love.
Yeah. So this is a unique camera. This is a camera with different features than the typical adult still photo camera has.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, the feeling right from the beginning was that, you know, it wouldn't be that interesting creating a camera that was really an inexpensive toy, that if you gave your son or daughter, if they broke it, you wouldn't feel bad about it. The whole idea was to use the camera as an opportunity to educate children, to expose them to a variety of interesting concepts that they would find more engaging while building the camera rather than being taught the same on a blackboard, for example.
So here's another silent video, and this time we're going to see kids using your cameras. Again, tell us what we're looking at.
Right now, they're actually building the cameras. These are kids in New York, in Bangalore, India, as well as Vung Tau, Vietnam. After having built it, we teach them some very simple rules of photography and take them outside, and then they go from science and engineering to photography, which is the art. Here, and they then take pictures, and after that they come back and critique their pictures, and then the last part of this whole project is to be able to share pictures with kids in possibly very different cultures, very different communities, different socioeconomic backgrounds, and that, I think, is a very important aspect of this project, to expose them to the way people, their peers, live in very different circumstances.
How do they share them? How do the kids in New York and India and Vietnam actually get to see each other's photos?
So at some point, we'd like to create a social network, very much like a Flickr for kids, where they can upload their own pictures and share them and comment on them. But at the moment, we're actually
they have internet access.
That's absolutely true. So we're talking about schools and kids who do have access to computers, at least a school that has one computer. But at the moment, we are actually selecting their favorite pictures and putting them up on our own website, which is www.bigshotcamera.org.
So let's share some of those pictures right now. One more silent video, and these are some of the shots. Tell us again what we're looking at.
This is a panoramic picture. This one's actually taken by my son. This is a stereo picture where you can wear red and green glasses and perceive the world in 3D, which is what you're seeing the kids do there. And so really you have three types of pictures. Here you see kids from Vietnam and some absolutely beautiful pictures. I mean, the fact that some of these kids had never really used a camera before, but yet were able to go out and frame that piece of the world and that moment so beautifully and capture that moment, it's really remarkable how quickly they catch on.
And they're very serene photos after, you know, so many of these frantic videos that we've been seeing from online video pics and everything that are popular on YouTube.
Yeah.
Does that serenity communicate enough content to the other kids around the world? Everybody looks like they're doing normal things that kids do. They're with their families, they're in their classrooms, whatever.
You know, it's a really interesting question. I think we're sort of seeing these two visual worlds now. There's video. You can use something like a flip camera and quickly upload a video. Videos are, of course, fantastic, dynamic, but there's an enormous amount of information there. But when you look at a still, you begin to then just take that moment and begin to explore it in ways that you don't necessarily in the case of video. So I think that still photography actually is a medium unto itself and can communicate and allow kids to actually look at a picture long enough to perceive things that you wouldn't in video.
Where does your funding come from, and what kind of rollout of this do you expect?
Well, I mean, I would see this as actually being in the middle of an experiment. We've built 12 of these cameras, which we've been using repeatedly in all these field tests, international as well as at Columbia. We have a workshop at Columbia where on Saturdays where we actually bring in 10 to 12 kids from the New York area and then put them through the process of learning, building, and shooting. And then they come back and select their pictures. But at some point, we have to go from 12 to many if we want to make this accessible. And so I'm really talking to people who might help me make these in larger numbers. So far, the funding has really come from my lab, and we also received a research award from Google.
And we're looking at a screenshot of your website.
That's right, yeah.
The web address for people who want to know more is?
Is www.bigshotcamera.org, and you can see right up there, the home page has sort of a historical perspective on the project itself, and in fact share some of my designs there so that kids know that things start on paper and then become real things.
Really great. Bigshotcamera.org. Thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And that's it for tonight's show. We're here Wednesday nights at 7:30 or as a podcast at CUNY.TV. And join me for my daily radio show weekday mornings at 10 on WNYC. Tomorrow morning, the State Senate votes down same-sex marriage. That's on AM 820 and 93.9 FM WNYC tomorrow morning at 10. Have a great night.